What is going on, y'all? It is Sloppy Saturdays, a college football podcast, back at you guys with another video. And today we're going to be discussing a topic that really is trending all across the NFL. It is Joe Milton. Will Joe Milton be traded from the New England Patriots? Now, the reason why we're talking about NFL here, not only do I want to combine college and NFL in this channel, but Joe Milton is a guy that I absolutely loved in college. You know why I love this guy? Because he was the most confusing player probably I have ever even tried to evaluate. When we're talking about Joe Milton, you could really be talking about the most physically gifted quarterback of all time. You're talking about a guy that's 6'5", over 240 pounds. He has the best arm anybody has ever seen. I know everybody's seen the video where he's throwing the orange over 100 yards. If not, look back at that video. It is pretty crazy. But this guy could throw a ball 80 yards in the air. He runs a 4.5, and like I said, he's 6'5", over 240 pounds. Right now, you could argue he is the biggest quarterback in the NFL. There are some guys at 6'6" that don't have the weight he has, but again, the most physically gifted quarterback we have possibly ever seen, and that's not even an exaggeration. Now, getting into him in college, things were pretty rough. This is a guy that went to Michigan, got beat out of Michigan, never really threw over 65% of his passes completed. Then goes to Tennessee, same type of deal. He sits behind Hendon Hooker for a year. Hendon Hooker gets hurt. He takes over, starts the next year. Again, didn't complete 65% of his passes. Didn't really have a crazy year, 2,800 yards his senior year, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Again, not a bad year, not a crazy year. And he goes into the NFL draft, again, really as one of the most polarizing prospects last year. There is no doubt this guy has as high of a ceiling as anybody we have ever seen. He runs faster than any quarterback. He throws farther than any quarterback, pretty much. And he's bigger than any quarterback. He has all the gifts. But the problem with Joe Milton, like I said, when I mentioned that he never threw over 65% completion percentage, is he never puts it all together. You've seen throughout his whole college career, he never really had much touch or feel. And you talk about throwing on the run, it was horrible. This guy cannot make a throw or a touchdown on the run to save his life. Now, after week 18 New England game, this is where noise started picking up because we saw Joe Milton in that week 18 New England game play unreal. We're talking about 22 for 29, over 240 yards, 2 total touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 in the air. And we saw Joe Milton be very decisive in this game. We saw his ability to throw on the run, and we saw his ability, like I said, to make really good decisions with the football, which was always a problem for him. When seeing this game, this opened up a lot of eyes, not only to me, but to people in the NFL. Like, when people are taking project quarterbacks, it is very important that you see an improvement when they're going into the NFL. Things that they weren't doing in college, after in the NFL, them doing. And you really saw that in that game with Joe Milton, that week 18 game. And I really don't want to hear in that game that he was playing Buffalo's backups. Yes, I understand he was playing a lot of Buffalo's backups. But if you look at New England's offense as a whole, I mean, come on. Not only were they playing with some backups, but their starters are backups for Buffalo. That New England team doesn't have a legit receiving threat. Their offensive line was the worst in the league. So really the playing field was even in that game. When you talk about that defense, that Buffalo defense with backups compared to New England's offense at that time. And he absolutely shredded them. Now, a lot of Patriots fans were giving Joe Milton, and a lot of people around the media were giving Joe Milton a little bit of flack because that actually pushed them back from getting a higher pick. But again, it was huge for Joe Milton. He put a lot of eyes on people, and now this guy is looked at to be a legit trade candidate in this offseason. Now, I'm going to talk about if I think it is worth it for teams to trade for Joe Milton. Getting into it, if anybody knows me, I have always been a Joe Milton fan. I'm always a fan of people that have super high ceilings because I feel like I'd rather take the chance. I am a gambling man, but I'd rather take the chance on a guy with a super, super high ceiling than a guy with like a super, super high floor, if that makes sense, and low ceiling. Because let's face it, in the NFL, you see it in the Super Bowl right now. You see it in the Super Bowl every year. It's very hard to win, even if you got everything put together with a really good mid-level quarterback. Like from those 8 to 15 quarterbacks, it's very hard to win with those type of guys. We see the Detroit Lions, we see the San Francisco 49ers, over just to name them, a couple of teams over these past couple of years that have great teams, but they don't have that quarterback with that super, super high top five elite ceiling, and they come short. So that's why I always go with guys for the elite ceiling. I rather go for a boom or bust guy. Now, going into Joe Milton, why I love a team trading for him right now, I'm gonna give you two reasons. First reason I love him is because I feel like when people go into the NFL draft, there's like a certain enigma around players and just a certain word of mouth over scouts that makes some people higher than others. For example, if you look at Joe Milton and you look at a guy like Anthony Richardson, they are extremely, extremely similar talents. When you look at both of them, pretty much everything's identical. They weren't really good or efficient college football quarterbacks at all. They both played in the SEC on big programs. You talk about Florida, Tennessee. And again, like I said, they're both project quarterbacks. So why did Anthony Richardson go top three, top four, I believe? And then you talk about Joe Milton going in the sixth round. How does that make sense? And we see other quarterbacks like Justin Fields and other project type quarterbacks. Again, Justin Fields a little more polished in college, but again, people are willing to take quarterbacks in the first round that are project like quarterbacks that don't have nearly as high of a ceiling as Joe Milton. That's what I don't get. So the Patriots took him in the sixth round. Like I said, it looks like they developed him a little bit this season. Obviously, they have no intentions of starting Joe Milton as they have one of the best young talents in Drake May. And they're going to look to trade him eventually, whether it's this offseason, next offseason. And again, if he doesn't get traded this offseason, preseason is going to be a big deal. Anytime this guy plays well, the trade value is going to go up. Right now, it's looking like Joe Milton in trade value garners a third round pick. Again, still a pretty good deal for the Patriots. This is a guy who took in his sixth round not even a year ago, and he's garnering a third round pick. And like I'm saying, for NFL teams, I absolutely love it. If you're an offensive minded coach and you see Joe Milton, you see what he did in week 18, you see the improvement, and you think you could develop this guy, the sky is the limit for Joe Milton. And again, I'm always a Joe Milton supporter, but week 18, seeing him do stuff that he couldn't do in college all his 4 years, that makes me even more of a believer in Joe Milton. Now, getting into some teams, I really like him for a lot of teams. I like him more in a setting like a Seattle Seahawks setting, a Los Angeles Rams setting. I like him where he's a backup for a little bit longer, another year, learn under somebody, and then take the role. And in an offense where there is already some nice solidified weapons. I think if he goes to like the Raiders, possibly even the Giants, depending on what the Giants do, and you throw him into a situation with a bad offensive line, not a lot of weapons, and you're putting a project quarterback through that and possibly starting him right away, I don't think that's the move. But if a team is going the veteran route and then Joe Milton to learn under again for maybe another year and then starting him, I absolutely love it. And especially we're talking about in a very, very weak quarterback class, I think Joe Milton's timing right now is absolutely perfect. We're talking about really only two first round guys right now that don't even have the ceiling Joe Milton has. Obviously, they have a higher floor, but they don't have the ceiling Joe Milton has. So I really like a team trading a third rounder for Joe Milton. Again, we've seen project type quarterbacks go with first round picks. Trading a third is nothing. And again, this guy is a better ceiling than possibly anybody imaginable because, like I said, he's probably the most physically gifted quarterback of all time. So again, my number one team for him would be the Seahawks. I really like the Seahawks. Him learning on the Geno Smith for like a year and then him going in there and going into a solid situation. Rams would be pretty good as well. Again, wouldn't mind the Giants, wouldn't mind the Raiders if they also have a veteran in place for him to learn under. But I absolutely love it. Again, there's so much talent, like I mentioned in a previous video, in the top of this first round. I wouldn't mind a team getting one of these talented skill position players and then going veteran and Joe Milton. I think a team should definitely trade for Joe Milton if you have a confident offensive-minded coach that really is they could develop him. Because again, this guy, if everything were to go well, which I know is a big ask, can absolutely run the NFL. Now, that wraps up this video for Sloppy Saturdays, going over the Joe Milton hype, and we are out.